I'm Jeff Dorenfeld. I'm Associate Professor of Music Business Management Department at Berklee. I teach intermediaries course, which is managers, agents, and attorneys, how they work together. And I also teach concert promotion and touring courses. Teach introduction survey courses and faculty advisor for the student-run record label. My previous experience is from management. Mostly focused on touring. I did manage the band Boston in the 80s, where I was the one that took them from, which was CBS at the time, which is Sony now, to MCA. And so the third stage album with the hit Amanda and then. And prior to that, I was tour accountant for Ozzy Osbourne, tour manager, tour accountant, lighting designer for Sammy Hagar. And prior to that, I was in college. Fortunate enough to go to the Fillmore Auditorium and see Jimi Hendrix and Jazz Joplin on the same stage with 200 people because Jeff's airplane canceled that day. And you don't have to go that, you go pretty far back, and I think artists who toured, who headline toured, even in the 70s were making money, but then it was, you toured to sell your records. Today, if you look at something like Radiohead, you give away your music to sell your tickets. So the revenue source of touring just eclipsed. I mean, there isn't even close to what you can make from tours. Major artists make from tours than they make from records. Even in a quick calculation, if you sell 2 million records and your royalties are whatever they generate, say $2.50, even give them benefit value $3, including everything, $6 million. Calculate out a show. Everyone knows what tickets are. Not unusual to have a $100 ticket, 20,000 seats. It's $2 million gross. Artist is probably going to walk away with 50 to 60%. How many shows do they have to do before they've made more money than they made off that record? And that's a big record considering last year, I think, what was the biggest record? High School Musical, Rascal Flatts, 4 million. Sales, not close, not even close. And that doesn't count the other revenue sources that we could talk about a little on how artists make money on tours. It is very tough. The thing is, because of the cost of doing business today, the cost of fuel, if you have a van, even if you convert your van to McDonald's grease, it's still the conversion costs are expensive. And, cost of staying somewhere, but I guess you can always sleep in your van and sleep in, have street teams and people there and sleep in their houses. There are ways of doing it. I know a lot of bands have done it. Every band has probably done it at a time of their career. They have to start somewhere. And eventually, you develop and build an audience. I wouldn't advise someone to just try to conquer the country right off the bat. Try to conquer a region where you can afford to do it. And if you can expand from that, then you can move out slowly and start getting paid for it. I mean, we have to earn our way. No, there isn't anyone who's going to pay for you to play in front of an empty house. So you have to draw people. And eventually, hopefully you can, and eventually, hopefully, you can be one of those bands. Every band from U2 on up, they've all played club circuit at one time in their life. So it has to be done. So. There are internet resources that you can trade gigs, meaning that if you can work with a band in another region where they'll use you as their opening act and you'll offer them gigs in your region as your opening act. So you'll both kind of help each other break new territories that way. So there are gig swapping websites. I should remember one because I know someone always stops me at South by Southwest, and he's got a pretty good gig swapping website. But there are things that absolutely do that. There's a electronic press kit company called Sonic Bids. They put up electronic press kits. You could be a member with them. They have over 125,000 artists as members, and a lot of conferences use that company to submit submissions to perform, like South by Southwest and different conferences and music events like that. So there are ways of doing this on your own. Has it changed? It's changed, obviously. It's been consolidated a lot. If we're talking about the big touring companies and the big concert promoters, they've consolidated. Touring has basically, been the same, but ticket prices have obviously gone up dramatically compared to actually expenses. Tickets, the cost of doing business is less than the revenue coming in. The change initially, if we can go back, artists used to play for flat fees. Then eventually, when they did that, like there was the Film Auditorium, and Electric Factory, and Tea Party, and different venues that promoters owned, and they brought artists in on the new wave of artists. If we're going way back, so Bill Graham's probably the most famous at the Fillmores. They were playing flats. You play, you get paid. Then eventually, artists start figuring out that people are coming to see us. We should get paid more. So those rooms actually closed down because they could not afford those artists. That's what eventually happened. And they paid them much greater flats. And then eventually they started to do percentages. A little percentage of the door. Peter Grant, esteemed manager of Led Zeppelin, figured out people come see Led Zeppelin, they come see Led Zeppelin. They do not go see who's promoting the concert. They do not go see the venue that they're playing in. And because of that, we should have a much greater percentage. The percentages eventually got up to 90% of the gross box office receipts after all documented expenses, which meant that the band at the split point, or close to the break even, the split is the noise at the exact break even, made 90 cents on the dollar profit. So if we look at shows today, why are ticket prices high? Why do things cost so much? Most businesses where the profit ends up is the one who's driving ticket prices. So we can say it was, the promoter, and then we could talk about how that changed too. But no one's twisting someone's arm to take 90%, or no one's twisting someone's arm to take a guarantee of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, whatever it is. So ticket prices are up. But are they up more than going to anything else? I don't think so. Buy a ticket to the World Series, you're going to pay it. Buy a ticket to the Ryder Cup, you're going to pay it. Buy a ticket to the theater, you're going to pay it. So everything is up. The biggest change, I guess, in the business, should try to keep this shorter, was when Sillerman started a company called SFX and started buying concert promoters up. And what he did is, he was purchasing all those businesses and putting them under one umbrella called SFX. He was purchasing also venues because the promoters owned the venues. And when you're paying 90% of the split to the artist, you better figure out somewhere you're going to make money. So if you own the venue, you can make money. And the reason that can happen is that the venues are sponsored, the venues have parking, the venues have what they call facility fees. The venues have what they call concessions. The venues, it just goes on and on and on. And so when you start adding that up, he's looking at this, he says, wow, I could sponsor, all these amphitheaters by Verizon from, all the way from Massachusetts to California, and phenomenal, multi-millions of sponsorship money that goes to whoever owns the venue. There's other sponsors, we could talk about that. So he did that. He eventually spun it off and sold it to Clear Channel. And when Clear Channel started putting their name brand on it, and everyone knows what Clear Channel is from, obviously from radio companies, which actually Sillerman originally was from. He was on the radio conglomerate too. They own now the concert business and the radio business, and 1,200 radio stations. And so they eventually realized that fans, because of like the internet, start to understand a little more about the business than they ever did in the past. And so they, fans were a little upset or thinking Clear Channel, because of Clear Channel's owning this, is it a monopoly or whatever? How this is all working out is this was driving the ticket prices all up. So there was kind of a backlash. So they spun it off and became Live Nation and used all the original names of the original promoters that Sillerman actually bought. And that's where it is today. The other, so we're looking at this big umbrella here of this big touring concert promotion company called Live Nation that has touring companies and has database companies and and concert promoters and everything that's necessary to have to run these kinds of business. And then we have another one called AEG, which is the second biggest touring company. The third biggest was a company called House of Blues, but Live Nation bought them, so they own them too. So you have these big touring companies, and there's some independent concert promoters. So how's that changed? It's just, I guess, it's consolidated everything into a couple companies. They promote all different size shows. So you can have a Live Nation promoter actually promote all the way down to a 600-seat club, possibly even smaller. They do own clubs. It's to their benefit to develop new artists, because if you're looking at the fact that you own facilities that seat 20,000 people, 5,000 people, and they own all the way across the board, and those facilities are sponsored, which means each one is generating millions of dollars a year from sponsorships, because they're all named, you don't name a venue the TD Bank North Garden because that seems to just roll off your tongue nicely. It sounds good. You name it because someone's paying you to have the association with the building. Now, they don't own that building, but just as an example. So if you want to keep that business running and working, you're going to have to develop artists who are going to fill those rooms up into the future. I mean, I'm a little younger than the Rolling Stones, but I'm close to their age. I'm older than you too, but they can't tour forever. It seems like the Rolling Stones maybe. I mean, we've said that about them probably 30 years ago, but there is a time. There's a time I'll stop and there's a time they'll stop. Someone's got to fill the shoes, and these people own these venues and all these sponsors and all the other revenues, and I could talk a little if you want about the other revenue sources and how that is generated from a ticket. But yeah, so they do development. You can play clubs that are owned by AEG, because there's a concert promoter in AEG called Golden Voice. They own a lot of clubs. They do club shows. Live Nation, a lot of their promoters, Don Law in town here in Boston owns a lot of clubs. So they own clubs, so they develop. Yeah, so start at a couple hundred people, all the way up to 20,000 seat amphitheaters. You've got to create your own excitement. I mean, you've got to create your event. You've got to be a band or an artist that someone's interested in. Is it tough to do? Harder today? I don't know. I don't think there's any difference today or when, John, you and I were doing this in this, I assume, the 70s. Yeah, you still had to get on stage and perform. You still had to promote yourself. You still had to get the attention of someone. There is, probably a difference today that, A&R, representatives from record labels may not be accepting much tape or listening to much, obviously not accepting tape anymore, but they're not listening to much music like they were looking for that hit. But everything else, I think, is the same. The way you promote and what you have access to and how you promote, the mediums you use may be different because of the internet. But other than that, it's still get out there, promote yourself, get attention, and someone will know. They'll know. I recall a group when I was first started out. There was a group called the Tubes, and they were a phenomenal live band. This band, phenomenal. And they got the attention. Eventually they were so good that the one hard thing they had is the record label said they didn't know how to capture their live show on vinyl, and it was vinyl then. And so, but today, if you're good and you perform and people like you and people keep coming back, fans keep coming back, which means you've got to think of yourself as a real serious artist. They keep coming. People will notice. People will take notice. It's not going to be a mystery. If you don't, it's like a tree dropping in a forest. No one will take notice. I don't think it's anything else but. I don't think it's picking up the phone. there's two sides. There's the artist side, obviously, and there's the promoter side. Artists work off guarantees and the most common deal, guarantee versus percentage, and I think I discussed that a little bit earlier. So if they have these big, huge shows, big, huge guarantees go with it, and then the percentages after that, and the percentages of the big artists are, we're talking 90-10 deals. And those deals are if you're working usually with different promoters. You could do deals today that are much more complex, that actually the promoter, Live Nation, AEG, and others, companies that are owned by those companies, actually purchase the whole tour. And they take all the revenue and throw it in one pot and figure out how it's split. And those are tours that a lot of, you have seen. The Police is a tour like that. Rolling Stones was a tour like that. Madonna, obviously, with their new Live Nation deal, will be tours like that. U2 was a tour like that, where it was purchased by a promoter, and that promoter basically handled everything. We're talking about, deals and sponsorships that could be media buy deals, or possibly even money didn't even change hands. For example, U2 did their sponsor, which most people are familiar with if you ever turn on the TV, where Bono was singing with this little product of white little headphones going into his little iPod, dancing around. That was the first ad that iPod did, that style ad that they've been very prosperous on. $100 million media purchase for U2 Apple. No, the money didn't change hands. Well, if you're U2 and you're an older band like that, I guess that's old today. I look at them as a young band. But you're looking at outlets to get your music heard. Well, there it is, all over the TV. If you're selling tickets for your tour, and they sold a hell of a lot of tickets, you're looking at a way to promote the tour. Well, that promotes the tour. All of a sudden, you've lowered your cost of marketing your record, you've got an outlet for your music, you lowered the cost of marketing your tour, you got an outlet to sell the tour, and the company who wants to associate their brand with your brand gets to do that and markets their product. And the money isn't necessarily changing hands. It's just both companies are benefiting from this major media buy, which Apple would probably do anyhow in another way. And of course, then they had their U2, whatever, iPod. But so there's those things. So if they're looking at, they have that, and then or they have specific sponsors for the artist side where they get actually paid plus media buys, and it could be in the millions of dollars. Then you go onto the promoter side, and I've already mentioned sponsor for the building, sponsors for the concert series at these venues. So they'll have someone like, Budweiser is real common in that. Budweiser will sponsor a bunch of shows. That goes to the promoter. Parking, every ticket has a charge, usually somewhere $3, $5. So when you drive in your car into an amphitheater, 4 people, if it's $5 ticket parking charge, you've just paid $20 to park. If you park over on that left side that says parking $30, VIP parking on the premises, because you want to get out the same day that you actually went there, and you paid $30, then you paid $50 to park, because you already paid for parking. That is non-sharing revenue to the band. If the facility fees, which is a real common fee everywhere, started out, mainly with like opera houses that had, beautiful wainscoting, nice seats, and nice carpet. People walk in, they lean against the walls, dirty walls, need to paint the walls, place the parking, fix the seats. $50 a ticket, restoration facility fees. Well, on every amphitheater show, the facility fees runs about 10%. So if a ticket is $75, that's $7.50. And if you've been to an amphitheater, cement, plastic, facility, restoration is a hose. That's a profit center. All that, everyone understands it. It's all above board. Those are, profit centers. So parking's non-sharing, facility fees non-sharing. There's always seats that are non-sharing. There's the revenue from merchandise, that concessions, their side of it somewhere, depending where it is. Say it's 30%. You buy a T-shirt for $30. It's $9 to the facility. Whoever owns the facility gets $9. The rest of it will go to the merchandise company, who the artist will have a licensing agreement with, so they'll profit from that. So there's a lot of different sources of revenue from both sides, and that are generated from tours. And that being said, and both sides have obviously pretty high expense too to put on shows and to put on tours. But yeah, it's a major revenue source for all artists. I mean, you start calculating. I gave you the calculation. It's $100 a ticket at $20,000. It's $2 million. And there's another interesting thing, and I'll ask you, John. If you are able to sell 8 shows, $2 million a show, right? Gross. Sell them in advance, and they sell them that way, right? Rolling Stones put them up, they're gone. They're not coming to your town possibly for some of the shows 3 months, some shows out 6 months. And if they do multiple shows, and they do $10 million, $16 million was the number I was just threw out, but say they do $10 million gross. Where does that money go? Where would you put the money? I mean, think about this. It's sold in March, and it doesn't change hands till September or something, August, September, and we got $10 million. $10 million has changed hands from the ticket buyer to Ticketmaster or whoever. Well, future Live Nation will be, supposedly as Ticketmaster contracts expire, that are Ticketmaster contracts are with buildings, by the way, not with the promoter. As they expire, they'll bring in their own, and we have that kind of money. I don't think we stick it in our, in our mattress. We don't put it in our piggy bank. Put it in an escrow account that probably earns, what, minimum 5% today? Easily. $10 million a year, simple interest. What are we looking at?
$50,000.
Yeah. So what happens with that money? Do the bands get it or the promoter? And so if we're looking at it that way, and you're saying that this is one, I'm looking at that's one city. That's city after city after city. So artists understand this. So either they may have it in their writers that all interest goes into interest-bearing account that they get, or maybe they're looking at it and say, hey, cost of doing business, so this is why I get 90%. Or if it's in a amphitheater, the percentages can actually go higher. And I have seen deals, I've seen them where it's 100% zero. Why? Because facility fees, parking, concessions, interest, different seats, box seats that aren't in sharing with the artists, things like that. So all that has something to do with the cost of doing business and how these companies make money. It's not, the ticket is one part of it, and there's everything else for the promoter side. The artist side, it's a ticket, obviously, and sponsorships, and then we have endorsements and other things. But so if you look at tours and you look at this, you say to yourself, yeah, there were people playing music, in the Roman days before, those tragic games. And it started then. They didn't have recorded music then. And they're still playing music today. Internet, no internet, space travel, whatever. I don't give a damn. We're playing music on stage. And what it generates revenue for an actual artist is who's successful. I'm not, and that's what we're looking at, because that's what supports the whole business, by the way. The bigger the art, if you have these artists, everyone benefits down the road. I don't know if these numbers are exactly correct. You can look them up. But someone once said, before Tiger Woods got into golf, the average PGA holder on tour made $60,000 a year. After Tiger Woods, the average golfer made $360,000 a year. Why? Because Tiger Woods drove that business so high with endorsements and sponsors, and ticket prices go up and people follow it. I think it's the same in the touring business. I think we need, I don't know if parity is the best. We need big artists to keep driving it, support all these things. Advances and splits, everything is saying, this is the kind of business we can do. And based on history of that artist, history of the region, competitive tours, what other tours did the previous year. So if you can, show that you can go out and sell hundreds of thousands of tickets and do it like that, big advance, very high split. And like I said, now with these big tours, all basically encompassing tours, some of them where they sign with the promotion company, Live Nation, where they do the sponsorship deals, the building deals, the DVD deals. I mean, we're talking, this is just on the touring side. Merchandise deals, all that stuff is handled by them. There's been tours where artists have been guaranteed $100 million, and then they would actually, from there, everything would, different than doing separate deals, that everything would be cross-collateralized, just like a record deal, right? Cross-collateralized, this show with this show with this show with this show. At the end of the day, we calculate what the promoter side gets and what the artist side gets. I'm not, I don't know how the ins and outs of totally of those shows. I haven't seen those deals, but yeah, those are pretty high profit, high end deals, and the cost of, obviously it gets back to that same example I gave, a simple example, cost of money. And so if they generated all so much advance, there's a lot of potential money there. Merchandising is great. I mean, think about this, someone is actually paying you to walk down the street wearing a sandwich board. I recall they used to pay people to do that. Now, Bill Graham was the kind of started Winterland Productions and realized that people want to buy T-shirts because they were tie-dyeing shirts for the Grateful Dead and stuff. And so how is this done? So basically, the artists will license their name to a merchandise company. For that, the artist will get a percentage of whatever the merchandise sells. So for the big artists, obviously the percentages are much, much, much higher. The hall fees are the concessionaire fees. Whoever sells them, they get a percentage of whatever is sold. Once again, if the promoter, AEG, owns a Staples Center, and Live Nation owns all a lot of the amphitheaters, if they own the venues, then they get their share of the venue side, which pretty common, 30%. So $30 shirt, $9, and whatever, you have to pay expenses on that. The artist would walk away, obviously, with the merchandise company would walk away with $21, and the artist would walk away whatever their percentage is with the merch company. Bigger the artist, bigger the percentage. It's just like everything else. So if you got 40% on a T-shirt, it's $12. The merch company then had 21, then it's 12, and so then you got that $9 difference there, and that goes to the merch company to print and ship and whatever cost of money is to do business. So that's kind of how it breaks down. There's other deals, but that's kind of one of them. Well, when he did it at the shows here, not when he gave them away via the newspaper in England, that was a whole different thing. When he gave them away at the shows, I think they were built into the ticket price. I always thought that was a good idea. I think that's I used to think about that years ago, even for clubs. If you give your CD that cost you $1 to make, and you say you're giving a free CD with a $10 ticket, that's a nice thing to do. And you'd be making, you just built it into the cost of your ticket. Well, Prince built it in, I think, on this previous tour to the cost of a ticket. So you bought the CD, but I think the CD was actually built in separate. That the fan base, I don't think, knew it, but I think that's how it was. But I'm not sure, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But I think this last one was that his deal didn't, I don't know if he had freedom to do that. I guess he did, and he pressed them up and he gave them away in England. Now, what else did Prince do at that time? AEG was opening their brand new O2 Arena in London, which was the arena that was, I think it was Olympic. It was something special. That arena wasn't doing really great business. AEG bought it, and they turned it all around. Prince gave all those CDs away via what I forget the paper that he gave it away in, but anyhow, he has sold somewhere, I don't know, 12 to 20 shows in this 20,000 seat arena. So what does that tell us? It goes right back to the same thing. If we can get our fans to buy tickets, and tickets today on a major arena show are $50 to $100 average, and you're generating 90-10 deals, which will generate probably somewhere 50 to 60% to the artist. Boy, that seems like a good plan to me. All of a sudden, it seems like a good thing. My music is marketing my other revenue sources. Record companies, I mean, I don't know how that plays to them, because there isn't any that participate in any of those acts that I've just mentioned. They don't participate in tours. They may participate in merchandise, but it's a separate deal. Record companies do own merchandise companies, but the deals are separate. Should be separate. Ray Waddell wrote a book on touring. He had Jake Berry as one of the co-authors. Jake Berry is one of the premier production managers in the business. He does the Stones, and I think he did U2, and he's done Bette Midler. He's done a lot of big tours. So, I mean, I don't know how much Jake Berry picked up the pen, but Jake Berry, really does know the back end of the business. So if you can get someone like that, I looked at it, and it's a really good book. For me, I think it's the best book on touring. I look at touring, and I tell my students, and when I first walk into my class, is that I'm either going to ruin a live show for you or make it 100% better. So if you walk in and you love everything you do when you go to a live show and you walk out feeling great because you just focus on that performance, you got to make sure you want to learn all about this show, because you're going to walk in now after this course or after reading Ray's book. You're going to look at everything else. You're going to know how much the artist is potentially going to make that night. You're going to know how long it took to put those sound and lights up. You're going to know why, Budweiser signs are there. You're going to realize that, sponsors are just like when you played Little League, and that fence that you hit your home runs to said so-and-so's hamburgers, so-and-so's ice cream, so-and-so's donuts, because they underwrote your Little League and pay for your bats and your balls and everything. Well, sponsors underwrite everything on these buildings and tours, so you're going to understand all that. And you're going to look at a show different, and you're going to understand why the ticket, how much is made, how it's broken down, how they take the taxes out, which is another whole subject matter, and all these different things. So if you read a book, take a course, you're going to look at it. I think it's much more enjoyable. I think there's much more to it. You'll get there early just to see it all happen, because you'll realize, wow, someone walked into this venue that morning and it was empty. There were 4 walls there. And I look up and there's a lighting rig, thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, and a sound system hanging over these people's heads, and a stage that was never there, and pyrotechnics that were never there, and all this stuff that someone actually put all this together and backed up, 6 45-foot semis, or in a big outdoor show, 45-foot semis, and actually built this thing so that I could see a show. And you say, maybe $100, if it's special enough, I realize what I'm getting. So that's the way, if you read the book, take the course, that's what you walk away with. You can understand this business. So.